In 1970, a gallon of milk cost about $1.30. A dozen eggs, 61 cents. A loaf of bread was 24 cents. Today, that same milk costs over $4. Eggs have been as high as $6 a dozen, and bread, around $3 a loaf. But here's the thing. It's not just that prices went up. It's how they went up, when they went up, and why they went up that tells the real story. This is a timeline of grocery prices in America from 1970 to today, and it might change the way you think about your grocery bill. Let's start in 1970. Nixon is president. Gas costs 36 cents a gallon. The average family income is about $9,800 a year. And groceries? They're cheap, at least by the numbers on the price tag. A family of 4 could fill a grocery cart for around $15 to $20 a week. That was completely normal. And the average American household spent about 13 to 15% of its income on food. That might sound like a lot, but most of that went to food made at home. Not restaurants, not takeout, not delivery apps. Moms cooked almost everything from scratch. There were no organic labels, no gluten-free aisles, no pre-made meal kits. You bought ingredients and you made dinner. It was simple and it was affordable. Now let's jump forward to 1980. The economy has been through a rough decade. 2 oil crises, stagflation, which basically means prices rising while the economy stalls, and groceries took a hit. In just 10 years, milk jumped over 60%. Ground beef nearly tripled. Bread doubled. These weren't gradual little increases. This was inflation you could feel every single week at checkout. But wages also rose during this period, so for a while, the pain was manageable. The average household income climbed to about $21,000 by 1980. Still, something was shifting. More women were entering the workforce, and families had less time to cook from scratch. Frozen dinners, canned goods, and convenience foods started filling shopping carts. People were paying more for food and getting less homemade quality in return. By the mid-1980s, inflation cooled down and food prices stabilized. Ground beef hovered around $1.50 a pound. Egg prices stayed under $1. For a few years, the grocery store felt manageable again. The 1990s were a golden window for grocery shoppers. Inflation was low, the economy was booming, and food prices barely moved. Notice something? Eggs only went up about 15 cents in 10 years. Bread barely moved. Ground beef actually dropped compared to the early 80s. This is often called the era of cheap food. American agriculture became more efficient. Global trade opened up, and cheaper imports helped keep prices down. The big box stores like Walmart and Costco entered the grocery game, pushing prices lower through sheer volume. At the same time, the way Americans shopped was quietly changing. Bigger carts, bigger stores, more variety. The average supermarket in 1990 carried about 15,000 products. By the end of the decade, that number was pushing toward 30,000. More choices meant more spending, even if individual prices stayed flat. The weekly grocery bill crept up, not because eggs cost more, but because people were buying more stuff. The 2000s started quietly. Prices moved up, but nothing dramatic. Then came 2007 and 2008. The numbers above show the shift from around 2000 to 2008. Eggs nearly doubled. Milk spiked. Ground beef jumped by more than 50 cents a pound. What happened? A few things all at once. Oil prices surged, which made it more expensive to transport food. Corn was being diverted to ethanol production, which raised the cost of animal feed. And the global financial crisis shook confidence in everything, including the food supply chain. For the first time in decades, people were genuinely worried about the cost of feeding their families. Couponing became popular again. Store brands outsold name brands. Families started cutting back on meat and fresh produce to save money. The era of cheap food was officially over. By the 2000s, grocery prices had settled into a new, higher baseline. They weren't spiking anymore, they were just expensive. And they stayed that way. Ground beef is the real shocker here. It more than doubled from the early 2000s. A shrinking cattle herd and strong demand pushed prices up, and they never really came back down. But something else was happening in the 2000s that doesn't show up in these numbers. Portions were shrinking. That box of cereal that used to be 16 ounces, now it's 13 ounces, but it costs the same or more. Economists call this shrinkflation. The price stays flat, but you get less product. So even when the price tag didn't move, your dollar was buying less food than before. This decade also saw the rise of organic, non-GMO, and specialty foods. The grocery store split into two worlds, the budget aisle and the premium aisle. And increasingly, the premium aisle was the only one with fresh, high-quality options. And then came 2020. The pandemic changed everything. Supply chains broke. Workers stayed home. Meat processing plants shut down. Panic buying emptied shelves, and prices exploded. Between 2020 and 2023, food-at-home prices rose by nearly 25%. That's the sharpest grocery inflation Americans had experienced in over 40 years. Eggs tell the wildest story of this era. They were about $1.50 in 2019. Then bird flu outbreaks wiped out hundreds of millions of hens, and prices skyrocketed. By early 2025, the national average hit over $6 a dozen, more than 4 times what they cost just a few years earlier. Ground beef crossed the $5 a pound mark for the first time in history. Chicken breast rose by nearly $1 a pound in just 2 years. Even bananas, one of the most price-stable foods in America, inched upward. And here's what made this period feel so painful. Wages went up too, but not nearly fast enough to keep pace. People were earning more on paper, but their grocery cart held less food than it did in 2019. By 2025, food prices were roughly 25 to 30% higher than they were before the pandemic. And for most items, they haven't come back down. They've just stopped rising as fast. So let's zoom all the way out and look at the full picture. In 1970, a dozen eggs cost 61 cents. Today, even on a good day, they cost around $4 to $5. That's roughly a 7 to 8 times increase. A gallon of milk went from $1.32 to over $4. Ground beef went from 66 cents a pound to nearly $6. But here's the real question. Did wages keep up? In 1970, the average household income was about $9,800. Today, it's around $80,000. That's about an 8 times increase. So, on the surface, it looks like wages and grocery prices move together. But that average hides a lot. In 1970, that was one income. Today, for most families, it takes 2 incomes to reach that number. And housing, healthcare, and childcare eat up so much of the paycheck that the money left over for groceries feels tighter than ever. Americans today spend a lower percentage of their income on food than in 1970. About 11% compared to 13 or 14% back then. But it doesn't feel that way because everything else costs so much more. Here's what sticks with me after looking at all these numbers. Grocery prices didn't just rise in a straight line. They came in waves. The inflation of the 1970s, the calm of the 1990s, the shock of 2008, the explosion after 2020. Each wave was caused by something different. Oil crises, pandemics, bird flu, supply chains, or just the slow grind of inflation doing what inflation does. But one thing has stayed the same. Every generation eventually stands in a grocery aisle and thinks, I swear this used to cost less. And looking at the timeline, they're usually right.